And we are live with another edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. I am one of your co-hosts, Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside once again by my co-host Andrew Johnson, as we are now through Week 7 of this year's National Football season. And now, Johnson, we are down to just one remaining undefeated team in the National Football League as of this past Sunday. A lot of great games that happened this past weekend, some thrilling finishes as well. And now we go into week number 8, where was still a little bit of questions to ask about who might be some of the more dominant teams in the National Football League itself. Some key injuries as well happened this past Monday night. And we have a lot of games that we're going to be looking forward to going into week number 8. A couple of games on our mushing hour later on. I think we actually have 8 games for week number 8 itself. So it will be a little bit of an extended mushing hour that we have this week. But nonetheless, another good week in the NFL this past weekend.
Yeah, another great week if you're a football fan. I had a really rocky start to picks last week, and I kind of redeemed myself a little bit at the end there. Still a pretty rough week for me, but we'll get better. We'll get better.
It's still a long time in the season. We're still not at the halfway point of the season either. So, there's still plenty of time to get that record up, Johnson. But for some of these teams, even though we're kind of near the halfway point of the season, it still might not be enough time for them to get back into potential playoff chances for them. Some teams are currently 2-5. Some teams, have 1 win. Some teams are struggling itself, maybe with 3 wins. So we'll see how the rest of the regular season goes entailing for them. But any other comments before we go into some of our game recaps that we had for Week 7?
No, I've got a couple tidbits going back for a couple of games, but we'll leave those fun surprises for later on.
Okay. Now, I will say, normally we do cover every primetime game that we have for when we do our game recaps. I think for the benefit, we won't recap the Broncos-Saints game this past Thursday as much. The moral story of that game, Denver's defense was phenomenal. The Saints are really struggling with all the injuries they have going on right now. And this was just the game Denver had to win. They got the win in that game. 33-10 was the final in that one. So they now improved to 4-3 in the season. We also had a London game this past Sunday. That was another one where not much to really recap other than the fact that monster game from Tank Bigsby. Jaguars looked a little bit better. The Patriots just have not been great this season. And now they dropped to 1-6 on the year. Jacksonville wins that game in London by the final of 32-16. So one of the first games that we are going to recap from this past Sunday is, how about that game that we had in Minnesota this past week between the two division rivals, that being the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings going into the week were one of the 2 lone remaining undefeated teams in the NFL. They were 5-0 going into this game, but a key emphasis on that word were, Johnson, as the Lions had a 21-10 lead going into halftime. It looked like they were going to be cruising their way to a huge division win, up 11 points in the third quarter. But you can never count out this Minnesota Vikings the way this season has gone for them. They were able to make it. They were able to actually take the lead in the fourth quarter after a scoop and score from Ivan Pace gave them a 29-28 lead with 5 minutes to go in the game. The Lions would get the opportunity to go down the field and set themselves up for the game-winning field goal, and that's exactly what they were able to do, with just about 15 seconds left in the game. They hold on to hand the Vikings their first loss of the season, winning this game by the final of 31-29. Monster game for Jahmyr Gibbs, considering that David Montgomery, for a majority of this game, was injured early on in the first quarter, did return later on, but they needed every single effort out of Jahmyr Gibbs in this game. Another monster game from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff only had 3 incompletions. He's looking better and better each week. And despite the loss, Sam Darnold, the company, did a good job offensively getting back in this game in the second half. Darnold, just 5 incompletions on the day, did have an interception. Aaron Jones had a very nice game on the ground. But unfortunately, the mistakes in the first half of this game, Johnson, are the reason why the Vikings do lose their first game of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a look at the first half because they got absolutely trounced in that second quarter, because the first 15 minutes of this game, this was all Vikings. It was the second quarter that really started the downfall. So I don't want to say that this was an absolute blowout or this was such a dominating Detroit victory, because they won by the skin of their teeth. Granted, they had a little bit of a collapse. The Vikings were a team that collapsed first here. Let's be real. They had a double-digit lead at the end of the first quarter.
Both teams had double-digit leads, yeah, and they both blew it.
Yeah, so if it wasn't for a field goal from Jake Bates to save the game, where he hit the "We Bring the Boom" dance right afterwards to kind of flex on everyone.
I forgot about that
Um,
until you just reminded me. So thanks for
come
that.
on, come on, you gotta. This is why you watch the game, for little details like
Yeah,
that.
I guess so. I
But
guess
let's
so. Well, you go ahead.
Jared Goff is unstoppable this game. He's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now,
Yeah.
which he's living up to his number one overall pick potential. Hard to believe he was almost drafted a decade ago. I think he was
Mm-hmm.
8 years
2016.
ago now, 2016.
2016. Yep.
So 9 years this upcoming spring, but he's having a phenomenal start to the second half of his career. Someone who was discarded by the Rams, so they could acquire Matt Stafford, win a Super Bowl, and hey, maybe he'll bring a Super Bowl to Detroit, which would be kind of ironic.
And they were close last year to get in there. They were in the NFC Championship game, and not for a really
Very
bad
close.
second half. They would have been that Super Bowl, and who knows if they maybe beat the Chiefs in that game. But
And
that's a game of what if.
what I will say is, if the Vikings had another 30 seconds on the clock, I think they were going to win.
Yeah,
If they
I
had
mean,
another 30 seconds, because the way that they were driving down the field, and obviously the clock is going to have to run out sometime. It just so happened to happen in the middle of their drive. So if they had another 30 seconds, I think they would have won the game. But this is why you play every down of football so fiercely and competitively, because you don't know if it's going to be your last. So
yeah, I think we kind of knew also that the Vikings were eventually going to lose one of their games on the season. They were not going to finish the season undefeated. Everyone was surprised at this point in the season that they were undefeated, especially with Sam Darnold being a quarterback. And he had another good game, as I mentioned, this past Sunday. But unfortunately, it was just not enough to get the victory over Detroit. But it's a good litmus test for this Vikings team to prove it to the rest of the NFL world that, hey, listen, we're actually a really good team. Like, we've beaten the Texans already. We beat them in good fashion. We beat Green Bay on the road, and we went back and forth with this Lions team after we were down 11 points at one point in the game.
but I think that's going to bring us to our second game here, where Green Bay pulling out another huge win. NFC North on fire this season. Big
Best
win
division
over
of
the
football.
yeah. Every single team, spoiler alert, is in the playoffs right now. So if it ended today, the entire NFC North would be in the playoffs. I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think was even
Nope.
possible up until they expanded the playoffs recently. But yeah, Packers get a big win over the Texans. Jordan Love, little turnover happy, but he got the job done. CJ
He's
Stroud,
pulling his Brett Favre impression.
yeah, ironic because he was in Green Bay.
Right.
CJ Stroud looked very mortal this game. He did not look like the that top touted QB that we've seen over the last year and a half now. He struggled, but the ground game, Joe Mixon really did some damage. He kept him in the game, and CJ Stroud was missing his top receivers. That's what it really boils down to. Yeah, I know Stephon Diggs was out there, but that was really it.
Yeah, I mean, Tank Dell had 8 targets, did not have a single reception in this game. Diggs had a 5 for 23 reception day. And still without Nico Collins, that certainly does not help this offense. But you mentioned Joe Mixon. He's looked pretty good in his first 2 games back from injury. But a big story for this game was the Packers getting this victory, because a lot of people are trying to decipher how the Packers are going to be this season. And Jordan Love, is throwing a good amount of interceptions. Let's not face that fact. But he's also throwing a lot of touchdowns this season as well. And having a guy like Josh Jacobs in your backfield, it also helps you a lot. It sets up play action for you, which is also what's been working for the Packers this season. And let's note this also, Johnson, for this game. The Packers, one of their biggest struggles probably in the last 5 years has been kicking issues. They really have not found a kicker ever since they let go of Mason Crosby. What was it, I think 3 or 4 years ago, and they
Hard to
just
believe a
signed.
46-year-old man was keeping this team together.
I know, but that was really the case, honestly. Sometimes you need a kicker, because at the end of the day, there's kicks like this that decide games, and that's exactly what happened in this one. They gave up a field goal late, had to go down the field and set themselves up for their own game-winning field goal, and their newly kicker, Brandon McManus, the former Denver Bronco, makes the game-winning field goal as time expires to give them this 2-point victory. However, Johnson, it is a bad beat for anyone that had any particular money on this game, as everyone knows. If you went into this game, you took the Packers minus 2.5. That was a bad beat. You had the Texans plus 2.5. You were sitting pretty after the way this game ended. But
One of my few
nonetheless,
wins this week was Texans plus 2.5. One of my very few victories.
yeah. Yeah, you'll take it however you can get at this rate, right? But yeah, now both teams go to 5-2. The Texans still firmly at top of the AFC South. Big game for them this upcoming weekend. Packers are also 5-2, but right now are still in third place in the NFC North because of both Detroit and Minnesota with only one loss on the season. So that just goes to show you how good this division has been all year long, and it's going to continue to be that way for the rest of the season to come. But big win for the Packers. They now play Jacksonville coming on Sunday, so you would tend to think that hopefully for their sake they get the victory in that game to keep themselves in position to try to potentially win this NFC North crown. Now, shifting our attention to a huge game that we also had this past weekend, how about the Super Bowl rematch that we had, Johnson, between the Chiefs and the 49ers? And a game in which, let's face facts, both quarterbacks in this game struggled very mightily in terms of
Struggle is an
production in this one.
understatement.
Uh, both of them would not a touchdown pass. Two interceptions for Patrick Mahomes, three interceptions for Brock Purdy. They did get touchdowns in this game. Mahomes getting a rushing touchdown. Brock Purdy got two rushing touchdowns. But the biggest story from this one is, well, for especially the 49ers, is the injury bug continues to hurt them this season. They're still without CMC. They now lose Deebo Samuel. And now keep in mind, Deebo Samuel went into this game with an illness, so there was questions that if he was going to play or not. He gave it a go, but had to be taken out of the game in about the second quarter because that illness was still plaguing him. So he got taken out for the rest of the game. And then the big kicker for them, unfortunately, was Brandon Ayuk, their star wide receiver who had the big contract dispute in the offseason. Finally were able to get it done about a month before the season started. He tears his ACL in this game and is now no longer going to be able to play the rest of this season. So the Niners just continue to have this really bad season of injuries now. CMC, we don't know when he's going to come back. Debo, at least you'll have back from his illness. They have a big game on Sunday against the Cowboys. But now you've lost one of your top wide receivers, and now it plays a question of what the Niners can do exactly to try to fix that situation. Who can they plug in? Who can they maybe get at the trade deadline to try to fix a situation that, unfortunately, right now is really big for them because they now dropped to 3-4 on the season. And if things don't start getting right for this team, they realistically could miss the playoffs this year.
I have a stat for you about the Kansas City defense here. Would you say this team is an elite defense?
They've been an elite defense the last couple of years.
Now, but nothing about this defense is elite, right? It's not like they're getting tons of picks. It's not like they're getting a lot of sacks, but they're getting pressure, right?
Yeah.
They're getting pressure and they're stopping drives. That's what they're doing here.
Biggest thing for them is that they are very good against the run. Like, they are one of the best rush defenses in the entire league.
Now, do you want to play a game here?
Depends.
Well, you could go back. When is the last time the Kansas City defense surrendered more than 28 points in one game? So more than 4 touchdowns worth of
definitely
points.
I would say definitely last season, right?
Yeah, it was sometime last season, but when?
I couldn't tell you exactly when. I'd say probably maybe sometime in early December, late November, maybe.
There's a trick question. It actually wasn't last season at all.
It was 2 seasons ago?
It was 2 seasons ago. The
Oh.
Kansas City defense, they have yet to give up 28 points. The last time they gave up more than, this excluding postseason, by the way, in the regular season, the last time they gave up more than 28 points in the game was October 10th, 2022 versus the Raiders.
Well, keep in mind, your stat also
points.
works for the postseason because they didn't give up 28 points last postseason either.
They gave up, if it goes back to last postseason, in the Eagles Super Bowl, they gave up 35.
Oh, the Eagles Super Bowl. Right.
So that's how far you have to go back there.
Yeah,
It's just madness when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said this to you last season for when they won the Super Bowl, or when they even got there. I said a huge reason why the Chiefs are in this spot is because their defense was sensational all of last season.
No, but this is a historic defense. They have 28 straight games where they have not given up more than 28 points. This is something that the 85 Bears didn't even do.
Credit to Steve Spagnuolo.
Is it really all Steve Spagnuolo, or is it Steve Spagnuolo plus the refs at this point? Because that's an absurd stat.
No, not this again.
Listen, Patrick Mahomes, this is a hard year to be a Patrick Mahomes hater. I will admit this, but This guy is undefeated, and he's thrown more interceptions than Daniel Jones and has less passing touchdowns than Joe Flacco, who started 2 games this season. That is a mind-boggling sentence to hear. Patrick Mahomes is doing his, and people are saying like, "Oh well, you should see if it's a miracle Patrick Mahomes can even play in this offense." Like, have you seen Justin Herbert's offense? Herbert actually has no name receivers. He has no name running backs, but he's not throwing 8 picks. That's all I got to say.
I mean, listen, I told you it's not been a good year for Mahomes. I'm not discrediting the fact. That's why I'm saying this is kind of similar to what happened last season in terms of the defense is just really doing phenomenal work right now.
Yeah,
I
but no,
mean,
this is
the Niners,
historic defense.
the
Like,
Niners were one of the best rushing teams in the entire league, and they just could not run the football in this game mostly.
yeah,
And
but there's never been a
even
defensive run this good
even
before.
in
Is what
week
I'm saying.
one, when they played Baltimore, the same thing happened in that game. The Ravens didn't really, again, they kind of did what they did in the playoffs the year prior, but they couldn't run the football in that game either. I mean, it's basically what the Chiefs have been doing the last couple of seasons. Their rush defense is one of the best in the game. They're not, making too many mental mistakes in the passing game. And when they need a timely play, they get a timely play on offense. So that's really what it comes down to for this team. And if you look at their upcoming schedule, I mean, they're on good pace right now to keep this undefeated streak going. They're now the lone remaining undefeated team in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's a real shame because that defense is the one who deserves it, not the offense. God help me. It has been ugly,
Yeah,
ugly
it's been
on the
a tough
offense.
it's been a tough year for you. Trying to with the Chiefs the way they've been so far this season, even with Patrick Mahomes not playing good. That's it's tough. But speaking of tough things, Johnson, how about the rough Sunday night that the Jets had? This might brighten your mood a little bit more, considering how much you love the New York Jets.
Oh, great,
Uh,
great organization. They are the premier source of laughs in the NFL.
yeah, there was definitely no laughing matter for the Jets in this past week against the Steelers. It looked like early on they were going to be in good sights. They were up 15-6 in the second quarter, and it looked like they were going to be able to get the win. But Russell Wilson and company did a pretty good job the rest of the way. Keep in mind, Johnson, I mentioned it was 15-6. The Steelers would go on to score 31 unanswered points after they trailed by 9 points midway through the second quarter. Touchdown from Wilson to George Pickens to end the first half puts them within 2. They then get a field goal to get the lead back in the third quarter. Wilson gets a rushing touchdown to give them a 8-point lead, and then a passing touchdown from Wilson and Van Jefferson, and then a rushing touchdown from Najee Harris puts the game on ice. Steelers get the win. They now go to 5-2 on the season with a 37-15 win over the Jets. And the Jets now, Johnson, have lost 4 straight games. And in their first game with Devontae Adams, that offense still did not look any better.
Well, I mean, can we congratulate Devontae Adams here? He went from a team with a 2-5 record to a team with a 2-5 record. But hey, his friends are there.
You want to know a funny
That's
stat
really
about
good.
Devontae Adams?
Please.
So the Raiders last week played the Steelers, and they lost to the Steelers. He
Yep.
went to the Jets. They lost to the Steelers as well.
So he's lost to the Steelers twice in one season, despite not being in their division.
I'm telling you now, if he got traded to the Giants for upcoming this week against them on Monday Night Football, he can make it 3 in a row.
That'd be an NFL first. But
Yeah.
who do you blame at this point? Because I don't think you blame Aaron Rodgers for this past game because the
Well,
Steelers defense, TJ Watt is playing at MVP level right now.
Rodgers, yeah, but Rodgers' 2 receptions were pretty bad. I'm not going to fully blame Rodgers for this game. He does deserve some blame, but their defense has been putrid this season. I don't know what happened to their defense. Like last year, their rush defense was a problem, but it wasn't like fully hurting them last season. It's fully hurting them this season. Najee Harris goes off for 100 yards. George Pickens burned the secondary for a good portion of this game. Russell Wilson pretty much did the old Eli Manning, Odell Beckham with like, oh, George Pickens is down there somewhere. Let me just throw the ball up and he'll catch it. And that's exactly what happened for most of the majority of this game. And when your leading receiver is Breece Hall, if you're the Jets, when you just acquired Devontae Adams and you have Garrett Wilson, there's a problem. That just means that the offensive line's struggling, which it has been. That means that Rodgers has to just check down every play because the receivers aren't getting open most of the time. And his 2 interceptions, as I mentioned, were not good ones. They were really bad underthrown balls. One of them maybe wasn't his fault entirely because it went off of Garrett Wilson's hands and it led to the interception. But the other one was underthrown and it allowed I think his name was Beanie Bishop. I could be completely wrong. I think that was the one that got both picks. But it led Beanie Bishop to getting 2 interceptions and having himself a career night. And yeah, I don't know. The Jets are just in a bad spot right now.
I mean, the Jets are going to jet, and
They
what do
lose
they
in New
have to show
England.
for it?
They lose in New England
No,
this
they're going to
Sunday.
beat New England because we're tanking for the
They
future.
they sh-
Uh,
they should, but I'm saying they somehow were to lose. The season already looks like it's
Drake
over.
May got the he got the memo. He looked. Listen, and I said this before because Jacksonville is a horrific defense. They were a bottom three pass rusher defense. That's why
Yeah,
Drake May looked good last week. I'm a New England fan, but I have to temper my expectations. Hey,
yeah.
what? Because we had some genius in the group chat, and you know who you are, calling. Oh, look, Mac Jones could do this. Yeah, because anyone could do that against the Jacksonville defense. Their pass rush is horrific. A bottom three pass rush means you have time to sit in the pocket. It's just it's ridiculous that people want to crown Drake May already when he's played 2 games.
They still got time to figure out what he's going to be for your team. Still got
I know.
time.
I'm just bitter about it.
I know. But yeah, the Jets are now 2-5, and it just nothing's gotten better. They've now lost 4 in a row. It looked like everything after that game against the Patriots earlier this season was going right for them, and then they played that game against Denver, and ever since that game has happened, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for that franchise. So, good luck, Jets. I don't know where you go from here. Now you're 2-5, and your playoff hopes are really dwindling as each and every week continues to go by. Now, let's go to Monday night, Johnson. We had 2 games this past Monday, and let's start off with the high scoring affair that we had in Tampa Bay between the Ravens and the Buccaneers. Now, on paper, yes, it was a 10-point win for Baltimore, but let's face facts. Baltimore handled this game very much throughout the entirety of this one. Defense forcing a couple of interceptions on Baker Mayfield in the first half. Lamar Jackson slinging the ball in this one. 5 passing touchdowns in this game. Another monster game from Derrick Henry at 169 yards rushing and a receiving touchdown. Rashad Bateman looked good in this game as well. But the biggest storyline coming out of this game, Johnson, has to come from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sideline. They lose both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans to injuries in this game. Mike Evans is going to be out until at least week 11. That's when their bye week is with a hamstring injury. And an even bigger loss is Chris Godwin, who coming into this game was second in the NFL in receiving yards. He will now be out for the rest of the regular season with a dislocated knee. I think, right? Is that what happened? Is dislocated his knee in that game?
Yes,
Um, yeah, Tampa Bay's in a bad spot too. I mean, you're tied for first place, but at what cost at this right now? You've lost your top 2 wide receivers. I think their number one receiver right now is it Sterling Shepard? I
it
I
is.
don't I yeah, they're in for
Listen, and they count. Listen, Chris Godwin doesn't deserve it, but when you're down by by 2 scores with a minute left in the game, pull your starters because he got hurt with 58, I think 48 seconds left in the clock.
well, keep in mind that was when it was a 10-point game. If they go down the field and score a touchdown, they have to get an onside kick and then they could get the ball back
Right,
potentially.
but you get it back with 30 seconds left. I mean, let's be
I
real
mean,
here.
the odds of it happening, I mean, listen, they had recovered an onside kick already in the fourth quarter, so you never know. But the odds of it happening are very slim. I get it. Um, yeah, I don't know. Tampa Bay's going to have to rely on Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, who they drafted, but Kate Otten, their tight end. But 2 tremendous losses to this team now, who is fighting for a division title at this point in the season. And look who they're playing this week. They're playing the Falcons, who they're tied right now for the division lead. So uh, I don't know. If I'm a Buccaneers fan, I'm not really
You're
having
not
high
thrilled.
hopes. Yeah, I'm not having high hopes the rest of the
After
way.
having very high hopes 2 weeks ago, you're kind of sweating now.
Right. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, if you saw the injury itself, Johnson, it was a very gruesome injury for Godwin. So the best goes out to him. And that might be the last time, too. You might see him in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform. He's a free agent at the end of the season as well. So that really could have been the last time you see Mike Evans in a Bucs uniform. And if that was the case, that's a terrible way to go out of your Buccaneers career because he had a very
Yeah.
solid career with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Mike Evans has been the little engine that could his entire career in Tampa Bay. Uh, he's just never he's never disappointed. He's had 1,000 yard receiving seasons, no matter who's his quarterback. It doesn't matter who was throwing him the ball. He was
Yeah,
getting his 1,000 yards for
but keep
years. He
him.
did it.
Yeah, but keep in mind with now no Godwin. I mean, that puts a lot more pressure on him to get open because he'll probably be getting a lot more double team action
Yeah, you're
from
not wrong.
secondary. So yeah, it's a brutal loss because Godwin and Evans are one of the top two um, combos in
Receiving
the
duos in the
NFL.
league. Yeah.
Yeah.
AJ
So
Brown, Devonta Smith, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. It's red there.
yeah. So devastating injury. I dislocated ankle. I mean, like I said, folks, I would now recommend going to look at how it looked after the play happened, but it's a very bad one.
Maybe
So
if you're a med student, that's a good idea.
yeah, I guess that's how you want to look at it. But so we'll see what happens now for the Buccaneers going forward. The other Monday night game that we did have was between the Chargers and the Cardinals. You kind of mentioned about how the Chargers have been struggling without having a top tier wide receiver. Justin Herbert did have a solid game in this one. He threw for near 350 yards in this game, but the Chargers just were not able to put the ball in the end zone. They had to settle for 5 field goals in this game. We saw Kyler Murray get a rushing touchdown and also throw a passing touchdown in this game to Greg Dortch. And you're very familiar with Chad Ryland, the former Patriot kicker, was the one that got the game-winning kick for the Cardinals in this game as they beat the Chargers as time expires by the final of 17-15. They now go to 3-4, and the Chargers now fall to 3-3.
Yeah, Chargers can't catch a break. The last minute field goal, they win the game. It's story of the life if you're a Chargers fan. You've become numb to it. And it's really sad because the Chargers have had so many games like this. They could easily be a 5-win team right now. This could be a lot different if they had a true number one wide receiver. If they kept, let's say, Austin Eckler, this could be a completely different team. But sadly, that's not the case. But
Yeah,
Harbaugh does
Keenan
have him
Allen.
on the right. Yeah, Harbaugh has him on the right track though. So there are some positives here. You just have to wait and see if it'll actually get some payoff.
Yeah, I think the problem for this team right now is their inability to score in the red zone. I think they're one of the bottom 3 or bottom 5 teams in the NFL in red zone efficiency, which is a huge issue for any team trying to score points. And it showed last night in that game against the Cardinals. That having to sell for 5 field goals is certainly not something an offense wants to do, especially from someone that knows that, being a Giants fan. That could be frustrating for any type of fan, having to just settle for 3 points instead of getting consistency out of your offense when it comes down when you're inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line. So they definitely need to figure out that wide receiver room issue, but we knew that going into the season that was going to be a problem for them regardless. But they now dropped to 3-3. Still, they're still fighting for a potential wild card spot at the end of the season, but it will be very tough with the way the AFC has been so far this year. And for the Cardinals, I mean, listen, they continue to scrap out some wins. They're now 3-4. I guess you really can't say never for the NFC West if you look at it that way, Johnson. The Niners have been struggling. The Seahawks haven't looked great. They played a great game this past Sunday against Atlanta, but the Cardinals. I mean, it might be
This
crazy
is
to
the
think, but
division we thought. This
they
is the
could win it,
division that we thought the NFC South would be, and it's actually this division this year.
right? They
Because
really
you're right,
realistically could
every
win
single
it.
team has a chance to win this division.
Well, maybe not the Rams.
They're only 2 games behind.
Yeah, but there's
Crazier
rumors of
things have happened. I know there's
I,
rumors that Cooper Cup's gonna get traded, because
yeah,
especially now that Puka Nakua's back practicing. I
right.
know, but
Stafford could
pump the
be on the
brakes for a
move at the
week.
end of the season. Uh, so I don't know. I guess you can't really fault him. Maybe you could make that case, but I don't know.
You can be delusional. Be a delusional fan for all you want it. We have many delusional fans. I'm one of them. You're one of them.
I'm definitely one of them. I'm definitely one of them. The way this week's going to go for me, I'm going to be very delusional. As of this recording on Tuesday night, October 22nd, where you and I will both be getting ready to watch the next season opener. I have the Yankees with the World Series on Friday, so the delusional fandom is certainly going to be happening this entire week. But the one thing I'm not delusional about is the New York Giants, because I know my expectations for that team at the
Want to
rate
hear
this
something funny
season is
about the
done.
Giants, by the way?
I guess so.
I was listening to the fan on the way home. And the
Mm-hmm.
last call of the day was about how Daniel Jones deserves another shot with the Giants.
Okay. Do you know
I
what's
swear to
funny
God.
about that? You know what's
Yeah,
funny about that?
because Tiki and Tiki was making fun of it. Like, we have the Yankees in the World Series, we have the Knicks season opener, and you're calling me to talk about Daniel Jones right now.
Yeah. You know what's funny about this? So remember how last year the Rangers and the Devils played at MetLife?
Yes.
Yeah, there were more. So the players that got goals in that game have scored more than Daniel Jones has thrown touchdown passes in the last year.
Yeah, what's the issue?
He hasn't thrown a touchdown pass at home since 2022.
Yeah, it's been 687 days. I know.
Yeah, that's a problem. And
It
he's going to get
happens.
upset at the end of the game that he got benched for Drew Lock because they were down 28-3.
It happens, man.
Like,
Happens to the best of us.
they're so frustrating. I called it last week. I told you Saquon was going to go off against them, and that's exactly what happened. He absolutely torched the Giants in that game. But like I told you, also, I wasn't going to let the Giants ruin my entire weekend after the Yankees clinched the AL pennant. So I wasn't completely annoyed on Sunday when that was going on, but still very annoyed to be a Giants fan right now with the way the season has gone. But unfortunately, we're going to have to talk about them this week, Johnson, because they are going to be involved in the mushing hour as we now head into week number 8 of the NFL season. You mentioned it, not a great week for you last week in week number 7. Still positive record on the season, so there's still room to improve that record. I'm starting to get a lot more better the last couple weeks. I'm now finally got a little bit of a cushion in terms of being over 500 on the season, so I'm looking to continue my record for the next couple weeks and continue to stay over 500. And with 8 games this week, we'll put that to the test whether I keep my record above 500 or if I go back to the bottom of the pit where I was earlier this NFL season. So let's kick it off with the first game of the week, and that is the primetime game on Thursday night as the Vikings head into SoFi Stadium to take on the Los Angeles Rams. The Vikings are a road favorite in this game, minus 3 points, with the over-under set at 48.5 for this one.
All right, give me Vikings -3 here. I don't trust the Rams. Easy as that.
I don't think I know. So you talked about Nakua is getting returning from IR,
Yes,
but
I don't think he'll play.
I don't think he's going to be eligible to play.
No,
I
he got the green light to just practice this week, so he's not going to play.
so I
That's my
think
guess.
Cooper Cup is playing in this game. They didn't
Yes,
play him last week in their game against the Raiders, so they kept him for at least this game. And it's a big game because you mentioned it. They still technically have an outside chance at the NFC West because of the way that division's gone. But the Vikings need this game, Johnson. I mean, the way the division's going right now, they just lost their
they
first game.
desperately need this winning. Yes, I agree.
I don't want to say it's an early desperation game, but depending on how the rest of the NFC North does the next couple weeks, they really could use a game like this against a team that they probably should beat. So I'm going to agree with you again, and like we did for our college football mushing hour. If those of you didn't listen, most of our picks were the same. So I'm going to have, unfortunately, a mush right here. I will also be going with the Vikings -3, so that means hammer the Rams +3. The Vikings probably win this game by 1 or 2 points. That's going to be the case. Now, Johnson, what do we have coming up on Sunday?
This Sunday, we have the Eagles going into Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Bengals are at home, and they are a 2.5-point favorite. Over under is slated at 47.5. Give me Bengals -2.5 here. I have no faith in the Eagles, and I'm sure a lot of their fans don't at this point either. So that's my take.
I think the only hope you could have is that Saquon Barkley just continues to play the way he's been playing this season. He's been unbelievable. It stings to say as a Giants fan, but he's been insane for the Eagles this entire year. Now, if you look at this game between these two teams, I mean, you look at the playmakers in this game. You have AJ Brown, Barkley, Devonta Smith for the Eagles. Bengals got obviously Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They've been getting a lot better of late. The good thing for the Bengals is, Johnson, is that they're finally starting to hit that stride these last couple weeks. The question is going to be, is their defense going to be able to play a strong, solid game in this one against the Eagles? I don't know. I also will go with the Bengals -2.5. I think they do get the dub, but I also am going to go with the over in this game. I think this will be a very high-scoring affair between these two teams this upcoming Sunday in Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, let's go into an NFC South divisional matchup that will decide who will be in first place in the NFC South after this week. As the Atlanta Falcons go into Tampa Bay to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Falcons going on the road are a 2.5-point favorite. Over under set at 46.5 for this one.
Give me the Falcons minus 2.5 here. We don't know what's going on in Tampa Bay. Uh, Kirk Cousins has been heating up as of late. You may
Except
see
for last
Sterling.
week.
Yeah, well, yeah, except for last week. Let's just ignore that. We don't know
He
what's
wants to ignore it too.
there's so many. Listen, we don't know who the starting running back is. We don't know who the second string running back is. We don't know who the first or second string wide receivers. There's too many question marks for the Buccaneers right now. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Falcons minus 2.5.
Yeah, I think because of the question marks for Tampa Bay, I think that's why you have to take the Falcons in this game. You don't know what the receiving core is going to look like. You have to trust that running game right now, and that's really another question mark too, because you have Rashad White, you have Bucky Irving, you have Sean Tucker, who's emerged of late. That's probably where they lean on this team to be the next couple weeks, but I don't know if that's going to be enough to stop the the Falcons, excuse me. And look what happened the last time these two teams played on Thursday night. It was a high scoring matchup in that game, but I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to be able to score that many points without Evans and Godwin. So I'm also going to go with the Falcons minus 2.5 in this game. What do we have
Okay,
for the next game?
our next game, we have the Indianapolis Colts going on the road into Houston, Texas to take on the Texans. Texans at home are a 6-point favorite. Over under is slated at 45.5. Give me the Colts in this game. I don't know why. I feel like Colts plus 6. I can't really explain it. It's just kind of a gut feeling.
Yeah, I don't blame you because 6 seems like a lot for this game. I
It's
understand
a
the
lot.
Colts.
It's going to be high scoring.
You think it's going to be high scoring?
I think it's going to be high scoring.
I'm still concerned about the Colts offense because Anthony Richardson just continues to not look great every single week over this offense.
I'll figure it out
If they
eventually.
get Jonathan Taylor back, I mean that certainly will help. That certainly could help that offense fix out. Um, I don't even know. I'm gonna go with Colts plus 7.5. I don't like the line. I think the Colts keep it closer. But to avoid a full mush, I'll just go with an alternate spread on this one. But yeah, I don't see. I understand like the Colts haven't been scoring, but the Texans also have not looked great offensively the last couple of weeks either. So I do think the Colts will keep it close, but I'd still have the Texans winning this game. Our next game, Johnson, a game that we probably did not even consider to be a game that would be scheduled going into week number 8 when the season began, but it's a potential matchup of this year's top 2 quarterbacks drafted in the NFL draft, depending on one quarterback's injury status going into the week. We'll have to monitor that one. As the Chicago Bears go into Washington to take on the Washington Commanders, the Bears go on the road, are a 2.5-point favorite with the over-under set at 43.5.
I don't know if Jaden Daniels is going to play, but Marcus Mariota looked pretty good. So Commanders plus 2.5. The Bears haven't really played a stout defense yet, and I'm kind of excited to see how they do. But until I see him perform against a good defense, give me Commanders
Well,
plus 2.5.
I have to tell you, this is not a good defense that they're playing this week, so
Well, you know what?
yeah,
It's even if they're 16th best defense, it is it's leagues better than anything they've played so far.
I
They've played
guess.
bottom 5 defenses.
Now, are you at least concerned that Mariota had that stat line just because it was against Carolina?
No, because I was told that Caleb Williams had the same stat line against Carolina. He looked like the second coming of God. So why should I
No.
be concerned?
Okay, that's fair. Well, we will have our first non-agreement. I will go with the Bears minus 2.5. I think even if J. Daniels plays this game, this is going to be a tough matchup. The Bears' defense is one of the better ones in the NFL this season, and I really don't like this Commanders' defense. I know they've been playing better of late, but if you look at the competition they've kind of played outside of Baltimore, hasn't really been great offensive teams they've been playing. So I think the Bears get the dub in this one, and I think they go to 5-2 in the season after this win.
All right,
But
that's
what do we got
a
next?
certainly a hot take there. We'll see who's going to be right here. We have the Buffalo Bills going on the road, going across the country into Seattle, take on the Seahawks. Seahawks,
How about
despite
this
being
game?
at home, uh, say that again.
I was saying, how about this game considering the fan bases for these two teams?
Oh, absolutely. It's going to be a barn burner. So the Seahawks, despite being at home, they are a 3-point underdog. So it's Bills minus 3 with the over underslated at 47.5. Give me the Bills here. I'll take Bills spread. Feel like
Well,
that's the obvious pick.
I think the biggest concern for the Seahawks, Johnson, is what's DK Metcalf's status? Because right now they're saying he's week to week, so he might not play in this game for Seattle. But I think even if he was to play in this game, he's facing a very taunted Bills defensive secondary that's been sensational for the majority of this entire NFL season. So I think even if Metcalf plays, I don't know how much I like Seattle's chances in this game. The only way Seattle's going to have a realistic shot is if Kenneth Walker goes off in this one, which is very possible. But nonetheless, I also agree. I'm going to go with the Bills, but I will go with -2.5 to avoid any potential trickery with that game. If I don't want to have a full push if it's -3. So I'm going to go with Buffalo -2.5. I still think they get the job done in Seattle. Great matchup between two of the best fan bases in all of the National Football League. Now, going into our final two games of the slate, let's go into Sunday Night Football, a historic rivalry for most fans, as if they want to put it that way. But two teams, Johnson, that are pretty much fighting for their playoff lives early on in this season. As the Dallas Cowboys go into Santa Clara to take on the San Francisco 49ers, the Niners at home are a 4-point favorite. The over-under set at 46.5 for this one.
Niners -4, and Mike McCarthy gets fired after the game.
You're making a bold prediction he gets fired after this game?
Yeah, not on the record, but I'm just saying it's going to happen.
Well, I think the good thing for the Niners is that they're going to get Debo out for this game, hopefully fully healthy. Obviously, losing Ayuk sucks, but at least Jordan Mason's been good for you this entire year. How are the biggest question I have for you is how do you think the Cowboys respond? Because they coming off a bye week, they got destroyed against Detroit their last game. What exactly is their mindset going into this game? Like this is a place where they've been haunted for years and decades. In Santa Clara, San Francisco, you name it. They just have never had any recent memory success against this Niners team.
I don't know, but Bailey's probably going to be there, so she's going to be on the sidelines cheering George Kittle. So how could you really go against him in
That was
this?
That's your outtake for that.
That's my hot take that Bailey's going to guide them to victory here.
Oh,
Listen, okay, I'll be being serious. If I'm the Cowboys, I just have to, I can't let the past affect the future. Does that make sense? They didn't play on those teams in the 80s and 90s. This is a whole new decade of football.
They also
I know they've had some recent struggles in the
they had
past
Zeke
here.
line up at center at one point. That did happen.
Listen, this is a new administration.
They also had Dak scramble on the final play of the game. They try to spike the ball, but time ran out.
This is a new era of Cowboys football. That's how you have to brand it.
Is it though?
And by every new era of Cowboys football, it's more of the same. But they have to convince yourself that's not it.
So. I'm going Niners -2.5. I don't know. I don't know if that speech really did anything for me to begin with after the Bailey comment.
Well, I was taking it was Niners -4. They're going to cover, but
yeah, but I don't know if they cover by that much. I think I would not be surprised if they win by a field goal. I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference in this game. The Cowboys will probably they need to at least keep this game close or even win the game. I just don't know if they do that. So I got the Niners -2.5. But unfortunately, Johnson, what's our final game of the week?
We are going into the Steel City as the New York Football Giants take on the Pittsburgh Steelers, an iconic rivalry of the 80s here. Steelers are at home. Iconic on one side.
Yeah, I don't know what rivalry you're talking about.
Listen, historically, these are two good franchises. Did they ever interlope at the same time? Intertwine at the same time? Not really. But we can make our own historic rivalry tonight, can't we?
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Go ahead.
I've completely broken your brain here, and I'm going to continue doing this.
Yeah, these last two games have gotten to me. Go ahead.
Giants going into Pittsburgh take on the Steelers. Steelers at home are a 6.5-point favorite. 36.5 is the over/under. Is it bad? I don't think the over gets there. I really think this game might end 17-7.
If there's one thing listen, the Giants sucked against the run last week, which is definitely concerning because the Steelers have been able to run the ball the last couple of weeks, but the Giants still are getting a lot of good pressure on quarterbacks. So maybe that's the only way the Giants stay alive in this game.
But
maybe
regardless of all that nonsense, Steelers -6.5 because I think the Giants will probably get destroyed by TJ Watt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just put TJ Watt. I mean, they don't have to put him on the side where Andrew Thomas used to be.
Yeah, they should just line him up wherever. What's his name? It's escaping me right now. No, who's the failed prospect from?
They're not starting Evan Neal. They don't start him.
They're not starting Evan Neal.
Now they're starting Josh Azidu at left tackle.
Well, I was gonna say just line up against Evan
But then
Neal, but
again,
it's
and
not gonna
even if
happen.
he's on Jermaine Illumifor, I mean, listen, Illumifor has been good. Illuminor, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Illuminor has been good for most times for the Giants, but it doesn't matter. It's T.J. Watt. He's nuts. I'm just gonna go under 40 as my pick for this game. I don't. I just. I told you last week. I'm this. I've already chalked the season. Like the season's already done for the Giants. It's been done. Uh, the game against the Eagles definitely did not. It definitely confirmed that for me as well. They pretty much have thrown the towel in at this rate. Um, I don't know what really much more you could say. I mean, you're without Thomas. Your running game is not consistent enough. They really can't get the ball to Malik Neighbors, which sucks right now because they need to get him the football because we saw how good they were playing with him. Uh, the Giants are probably it's gonna be a long night Monday. Thankfully, the World Series is going on at the same time, so I won't have to watch this game. And I advise any New York fan to also not watch this game. The Knicks are playing at the same time as well as the Yankees. So just
They
watch
are.
those
They're
other
playing
two.
this Friday and they're playing on Monday as well.
Yeah, I would advise any New York fan to not watch this game. Just watch the Knicks and the Yankees on Monday night. Don't bother putting ESPN on. You're going to want to throw your TV away if you're a Giants fan. So that's how I feel about this game. I'm fortunate that I have to feel the way about this game, but
Well,
that's what the Giants are right now.
that sums up the Bushing Hour, Nick. And I think before we bring this show home, any closing comments you have for all the fine folks out there listening?
Let's see. Well, on a non-football related note, because I'm not going to bring up, I already talked about my feelings about the Giants, but like I mentioned, as of this recording, it's it's opening night in the NBA. So both you and I, we already just previewed the NBA season going into this upcoming 2024-2025 season. So go Knicks! And as we also mentioned this past week, we had our MLB episode recapping the ALCS, NLCS, and our World Series preview. So go Yankees! It's going to be a very hectic week for me trying to break all this down, but we'll see how I feel next week here on the show when we recap college football, another week in the NFL, and we'll see also what happens for college basketball because we'll start our college basketball preview next week. And you and I both know we're looking forward to a big year from St. John's for this upcoming season. So I'll give you the final word before we wrap this one up.
Go Johnnies, go Patino, go Knicks, go New York. I hope every other franchise loses this year besides the ones I cheer for, but that's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. I think that's going to do it for this week's edition of the All Gas No Break Sports Show. We now head into week number 8 of the National Football League season. One remaining team is undefeated in the NFL, and that is the reigning Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. We'll see if they stay undefeated this upcoming weekend. Some big games as well between the Eagles and the Bengals. Falcons and the Buccaneers, the battle for first place in the NFC South. Colts and the Texans battle for the AFC South lead. We also have Bills and Seahawks, Bears and Commanders, and a big game on Sunday night between the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. This has been Nicholas Pavona, joined alongside by my co-host Andrew Johnson for the All Gas No Break Sports Show. Have a great rest of your week.